Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here, and welcome to another eMarketer Tech Talk, where we host guests from across ad tech, martech, and media. I'm Emmy Lederman. I'm an analyst at eMarketer, and today my guests from Uniphore and Quicken will share how they've turned consumer data into customized audience experiences, specifically in the personal finance space. So joining me is Brittany Bauschka, who is head of martech and omnichannel lifecycle marketing at Quicken. Hi, Brittany.
Hi, everyone.
And we have Ariane Sedchi, who is Senior Product Marketing Manager at Uniphore. Hi, Ariane.
Hi, Emmy. Thanks for having us.
Thank you both for being here. Ariane and Brittany have a great presentation for you, and afterwards we will open it up for Q&A. So you can use this chat window to submit questions for the Q&A and to communicate with other audience members. So with that, Ariane, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us. Thanks for the intro. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We're really excited to be here. I have a really awesome guest. Brittany is great. So really lucky to have her here to chat. So it should be a great discussion. Before jumping in, we'll go into a little bit more detail on ourselves and our backgrounds and sort of the partnership between Uniphore and Quicken, just to give a little bit more context. So my name is Ariane Sedji. I have spent the last few years in product marketing in the customer data platform space at Action IQ. So driving positioning and messaging and delivering education around the customer data platform and the broader market for enterprise CDP buyers across tons of different industries. Most recently, Action IQ was acquired by Uniphore, so now I'm supporting positioning for Uniphore's full stack AI platform with Action IQ powering that sort of data foundation layer. A big part of what I do involves showcasing the great work our customers are driving. So I'm really excited to be joined by Brittany. Quicken is great. They have a lot of exciting stuff going on with their CDP, and she can speak to a lot of those exciting things going on with their journey as a very integral driver of that. So I'll pass it over to Brittany to go into a little bit detail on herself.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. I'm excited to talk to you about everything that we have done with Action IQ by Uniphore. But before I dive in, a little about myself. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. These are the North Georgia mountains behind me. They are beautiful. I've been in marketing for over 15 years with a heavy focus on helping companies up their game through MarTech tools, data, and personalization. I have been at Quicken for over 2 years, and we are really focusing kind of on that transition. So going from kind of an outdated marketing model with siloed data, kind of limited cross-channel functionality, limited personalization, to really transitioning into a data-centric, audience-centric approach to everything that we do. So really excited to talk to you about that transition today.
Awesome. Thank you for the background. And yeah, I think this is definitely like a very universally relatable topic. I mean, the context here today will be in sort of like the financial services space, but I think a lot of this stuff it really applies to a ton of different industries. So hopefully everyone gets something from this session. So just for a really quick overview of some of the areas we'll touch on. So first, Brittany will give a little bit of a history about Quicken as a business, for maybe those who aren't as familiar, who they serve, the customers, the offerings, et cetera, and sort of what prompted the need to evolve their tech stack. And then we'll talk a little bit through her experience evaluating and choosing a customer data platform and maybe some of the criteria that they focused on and prioritized. Then we'll go into a little bit more detail on some of the specific initiatives and some of the use cases that they've launched with the platform, and then maybe some more forward-thinking goals. I'm assuming most of you who have joined are looking to improve the way that you activate data and improve your CX strategy in some way. I'm sure many of you are probably at different stages, whether you're, trying to identify like what exactly is the right tool, if not a CDP. Maybe you're evaluating CDPs right now. Maybe you're trying to just get more value out of your current stack. So we'll touch on all of those moving parts, depending on what stage you're at. Hopefully, there's some aspect of this content that is helpful. I'm really going to give Brittany the floor today. I know most of the people here are probably most interested to hear from her, since she has like the first-hand experience going through all of this. So please feel free, like Emmy said, to ask questions. We'll address, as many as we can at the end. But otherwise, I will go ahead and give Brittany the floor.
Yeah, awesome. So I want to start by maybe saying Quicken is not QuickBooks and Quicken is not Quicken Loans. So it's a very common misconception. Do not feel bad if that's who you thought we were. We are different. So we are Quicken, full stop, that's it. And we are a personal finance software company. We have been around for over 40 years. We have over 2 million users. We used to be historically part of Intuit, and we broke off over 25 years ago because our leaders felt really strongly about the product and the value it's brought to our customers. Our mission is to help customers lead healthy financial lives, and we take that very seriously by making sure that we are continuously updating our products, having a safe and secure way for them to do that, and evolutionizing our tools and features for them to be able to kind of keep up with their financial lives. As you can see, we have kind of a broader financial tech stack, if you will, right? So here's our different product offerings that we have fall into 3 categories. We have personal, we have business, and we have Life Hub. So from a personal side, we focus on your personal spending plan, linking all your accounts so you can view everything in one view. Think of your mortgage, your car payment, your loans, your investments, your credit cards, any financial aspect of your life, link it all together, see everything in one place. From a business perspective, everything I just mentioned about personal, plus adding all of your small business accounts in there as well, right? So you can help with invoicing to taxes. We want to make it as easy for you as possible to spend more time in your business and less time on your finances. And then our third product offering line is Life Hub. And this is a product that really helps ensure that your family's essential information, think passports or birth certificates or wills and estate planning documents. Kids are going off to college. Do they have all the documents that they need to be like easily at their fingertips? I think this is a really great tool to help families, individuals stay organized, have all of their documents in a safe and secure place, and you can share it with family members, caregivers, estate executors, whoever it is that you want to share with in a safe and secure way. And you'll notice I have 2 kind of yellow stars underneath our brand new products. So those are ones that we have launched in the last year and both are performing extremely well. There is a vast need in the market for these types of products. And then kind of one final call out is that we are 100% subscription based and we've continuously seen growth year over year. So we are excited to kind of use some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today to continue that growth.
Yeah, so couple things worth noting. It's interesting. Well, now you have this sort of like product portfolio. You have multiple products in the mix, which means, and I'm giving a little bit of a spoiler alert, opportunities for, cross-sell, upsell, and things like that. A lot of ways that you can evolve your campaigns. But then also you have both B2C and B2B. So that is sort of like another element at play. And then you've got this subscription model. So a lot to play with from sort of like a campaign perspective and a customization perspective, which is sort of where the title of this session came from, is this whole mix and match. There's a lot of things going on here. So I just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, and then this slide was just kind of a highlight of some of our, we've won a couple of awards over the years, some really great call outs from our customers, where, we've had a lot of rave reviews around people finally being able to kind of take control of their finances in a kind of easy, in your hands type of way. So all of that leads up to, we have all of these great new products. And we wanted to transform our marketing efforts to really be able to bring these new products to the masses. So kind of how are we going to do that, right? We had these key strategies as a whole of how we wanted to operate as a marketing team. So we wanted to focus on data and audiences. We wanted to have a campaign strategy and development that utilized those data and audiences so it was cross-channel. And then building on that, we wanted to include AI and personalization at scale, right? And we know that we need data and we need campaign strategies to help us enable those. Then with that, as I mentioned, cross-channel orchestration, right? We don't want this just to be on, say, email or say paid or in product or on our care channel, right? We want it to be across everything. We want to reach the user where they are engaging with us. In addition, how do you optimize that? How do you learn what's working for what user? Well, that's the experimentation and testing aspect. And then finally, being able to understand the insights of what actually happened and report out on that. So these are kind of our key strategies that we're working towards. And really, the next question is, how do we get there, right? And on the next slide, you'll notice we kind of took a look. Our first thought was, let's look at our tools and technology. So what we had at the time, as I mentioned, kind of very on the left side here for the challenges, we had kind of an outdated marketing model, a lot of silos across even just marketing as a whole, between data, between the tools that we use, between the teams communicating to each other, kind of understanding what types of campaigns each other was using or running, what audiences we were running. We didn't even have the same definitions for some of our audiences. Limited access for marketers to the data, right? So there were disparate data sources. So some marketers were using, let's just say, system A, and others were using system B, which they didn't always match, or they didn't have the same updated information, which obviously you can tell would really limit us in our scaling abilities and to kind of advance our use cases, and very limited personalization. And where we wanted to get to, where we saw a ton of opportunity, was around establishing a central customer 360 view, right? This was kind of I would say the core of everything that we want to do, is having data in a good place for us to be able to see everything we know about the user in one central place. Being able to do this in real time, optimizing audiences and campaign orchestration. So that kind of goes back to that cross-channel functionality. Empowering the marketer to really unlock the insights. So that goes back to, okay, we've done these campaigns, we've created these audiences, we have this data. How do we analyze that? How do we understand what's working, what's not? But also, maybe we're discovering new audiences, or we're discovering new insights about our users or our prospects that we didn't even know before, which enables a whole new set of use cases. How can we improve the customer experience overall, make our spend more efficient, and really just personalize the experience, so that way we're really sending the right message, the right time, the right channel, and the right way to our users.
Yeah, this is super helpful. And one thing I was thinking about, which I know we discussed while we were kind of pulling together some of this content, I think between the opportunities list here and then also the list on the previous slide of like objectives, I think something probably a lot of people who have joined today and a lot of companies in general struggle with is knowing, like, okay, we have this laundry list. Like, where do we start? Like, what is the right place to start? And sometimes that's like the biggest blocker, is not knowing where to start, so you just don't. Um, Especially when you have so many different departments involved. And this is like a really good demonstration of that. So how did you guys sort of navigate that, or how did you prioritize?
Yeah, so we took a step back and we said, I listed out those key strategies on that last slide, and then you see kind of where we knew that there was a lot of opportunity. And we said, what is foundational, right? What do we need in order to enable all these other things? Some teams tend to start with like the campaigns, but really, can you optimize your campaign if you don't have better audiences, which require better data, right? So for us, it was really all about getting our data in one central location, and for marketing to own that data, right? I know that's a big piece for companies, where a lot of times the data tools and technology really sit maybe with an IT team or with a data team or an infosec team, something like that, right? It was really imperative for us that this tool sat within the marketing department, because we didn't want to have to go to another team to ask for an audience, or if we need a new set of, a new data set, we didn't want to have to go to another team to ask them to pull that data set in from our other tools and technologies, right? So it was really about marketing owning this tool. And then we set out about saying, okay, now that we know we want marketing to own this, we know we want a tool that will give us a data foundation for marketers to use. What kind of tool do we need, right? Do we pull in our data and funnel it all into our ESP? Do we look at a data warehouse? Do we look at a CDP, right? So these are all things that we considered, and we eliminated, pulling it all into our ESP because that's still a very single tool centric option, but doesn't really allow for audience activation across channels. Um, we eliminated the data warehouse because while that's, conceptually, a lot of what we were trying to do, in terms of execution and insights, not as clean because you can't really activate in an easy way, and you need a lot of expertise to enable the data warehouse to do what you need it to do. Whereas a CDP is really built for marketers, where we were able to funnel all of our data in. We have tons of different data connections. Marketers are able to go in and understand our data sets so that way we can build our audiences within our own team, and we can activate to whatever channels we need to whenever we need to, right? We can schedule those. It can be a one-time send. We can trigger things. All of that can take place in a single marketing tool. And so that was that's really where we started, is we knew we needed the foundational tool around our data to enable anything else after that.
Yeah, and that process of elimination is usually kind of like what ends up having to happen, just because of the number of tools that are at our disposal these days and growing. So yeah, that's super helpful. All right. And then
Yeah, and actually one more thing before we get to this is I
Mhm,
know we had also talked a little bit about like who on the team is doing this work,
mhm.
right? Um, and there's a little chicken or the egg. Do you hire before you have a tool? Do you hire, or do you get the tool and then you hire someone who maybe knows how to use the tool or can learn the tool? Um, and I would say, did honestly a little bit of both, where I headed up kind of the project to bring in this tool. I knew what from a strategy perspective and requirements of like where we were trying to go, what we needed. And so we kind of started implementation. But at the same time, we also were hiring, we call them our marketing data scientists. And so there's kind of this, I would say, we have marketing data scientists, and then we also have a marketing um, audience owner, right? And they very much work hand in hand. Oftentimes they have very similar skill sets, right? So partial data scientist, partial audience builder, where they are able to really help us bring in those different data sources, send data where we need it to go, manipulate data as needed, understand our data sets. And so being able to have someone with that skill set is really integral for the utilization and optimization of the tool.
Yeah, that's a good point because I mean, as a vendor, we've gotten a lot of questions from prospects, but also customers even who are still trying to figure this out, like how to structure the teams that are supporting and driving value with, the CDP, but also really any platform is um sort of trying to figure out how to get that structure right based on your business model, your goals, obviously the tool itself. And I think what Brittany just mentioned about having sort of a group that is data centric, data focused, but really understands and is focused on driving the goals of marketing is really important. And we do have quite a few customers who are organized that way. They have something like a marketing data sciences team to sort of sit in the middle and play that middleman. I think that really can be like a make or break with a successful implementation. So um, that was super helpful.
Yeah, I would also just add to that like don't be afraid to change your team structure, right? Marketing is always evolving. We have there's thousands and thousands of different MarTech tools out there. Sometimes our team structure doesn't always align with maybe where things are going. So don't be afraid to make changes to reposition different job roles and things like that. I think it's a good way to help move the team forward.
Yeah, and probably a necessary exercise, I think, constantly iterating
Yeah.
and changing up because, the business is evolving, the teams can't stay the same. So
Yeah,
that's a great point.
exactly. Exactly. And helping your team learn new tools and tech as well is like That's such a big game changer, right? Encouraging them to kind of understand what other new tools and tech is out there and keep learning.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so going back to the slide here, yes. So after all of that, we kind of decided we knew a CDP was the direction we wanted to go in. But then thinking through, okay, what are we really trying to do, right? So what's our key criteria? Um, we narrowed it down to kind of four buckets. We said we need a tool that can integrate a diverse data source ecosystem, right? We have data all across our company. We wanted to have everything consolidated in a single place. I will also call out, we are not consolidating every single data point across the company. We are pulling in the data points that are relevant to marketers from different data sources. The second piece was a unified user profile. So this was kind of, in addition to having a consolidated view of all our data, once that's in there, you need to make sure you have a unified view of of the user, whether they're a prospect or a customer, because maybe Brittany's over here in this data set, but I'm also over here in this data set. And if you don't know that I'm the same person, you view me as two different people, which means you're marketing to me in two different ways. So you want to be able to tie all of that together. Um, and that's really working with, what are your identifiers? How can you have, ideally you would have a universal identifier for everything. Doesn't always work out that way. But I think mapping out what works for you and how your data is structured is really integral to this process.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, 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 go ahead, go ahead.
I was just going to move on to the third point. So if you had a question.
No, no, no. I had a question, but I'll wait until you're done with all of them.
Okay, okay. Um, so then the third piece of criteria was being able to activate to various channels, right? As I mentioned, being cross-channel orchestration was one of our big key strategies. And so needing a tool that could actually help us do that, right? So we send emails, we send in product messages, we send SMS, we send paid media, we do web personalization, we have a customer care channel where we also export data. So I'm sure I'm missing one in there, but all of those different types of channels and vendors that we are needing to send our audiences to, we needed to be able to do that. So this was a big piece where making sure we had one either out of the box channels or easy integratable APIs or whatever type of data connection it is that you need between those to send the data, making sure that that's available in the tool that you're choosing. And then the final piece was security. So obviously you're dealing with data. A lot of times, especially as marketers, we're dealing with PII. And especially in the financial industry, we're dealing with people's personal financial data, right? So we want to make sure that there is a lot of security in place. And you want to find yourself a good partner that you feel comfortable with, and you do the full InfoSec review with them. So everyone at the company feels confident in this tool selection.
Yeah, what I was going to say, and something that came to mind as you were going through these is I think it's worth noting that for Quicken specifically, just talking through the different products and the ways that your customers use those products, they're inputting not only PII, but like very personal things other than just like the PII that we are familiar with, like things
Mhm.
about their lives. And so that can definitely complicate things from a data perspective, but also from like an activation perspective, like sort of towing that line of like how personalized do we get, how custom do we get. So maybe you can talk about that a little bit when you talk about the use cases. But it was just something that occurred to me, and I think that's something that can apply to a lot of different industries, even the ones that aren't in highly regulated spaces. Like just this whole notion of like how personalized is too personalized.
Yeah.
So anyway, that just came to mind.
Yeah, I would say, you don't want to come across as creepy when you're doing your personalization. What I like to say is if you are creating a good personalized experience for your users, oftentimes they don't even realize that you're doing personalization.
hmm
So I don't mean like having a hi Brittany in an email. I mean, the user is seeing content that is relevant to them, and they just assume that that's what everyone's getting, right? Or that maybe based on a survey they took that, okay, great, now we're sending them this specific piece of information, but the user's not always making all those connections, right? So for the user to not even necessarily know that you're doing a ton of personalization for them, that means you know you're doing it in the right way because everything is relevant to them as is.
Yeah, and I think all of these four buckets will feed into that, not having two separate emails where they think that you're different people at different stages and meeting them at, the channel that they're in. I think those are all the kinds of things that result in what you just described. So yeah, but this was super helpful. Thank you for walking through all of that. Um, so I'm gonna give Brittany a little bit of a breather for a second. I'm just gonna shift gears for a minute, just a couple slides, and just talk a little bit more broadly about the CDP market as a whole, from our perspective. The market's constantly changing. I'm sure most who have joined today, like even if you're not familiar with CDP, like MarTech, it just from one to the month to the next, it can be totally different. It's a lot to keep tabs on. So we do a CDP market guide every year to sort of package up our POV as a vendor and sort of distill everything that has changed over the last year into like a few key observations or predictions. So I'm going to just quickly highlight a couple. Um, so first one, which is certainly not new to anybody, probably, but is worth noting, is composability. And this actually does tie into some of the things that Brittany has mentioned about cloud data warehouse, things like that. Um, it's worth noting as a continued key focus of pretty much most CDP buyers or tech buyers in general, continuing on into this year. Um, a focus for both vendors and the buyers. We're trending toward composability really being like a requirement, not so much like a trend or a nice to have. So I'll talk a little bit more about this in a second and sort of what I mean by that for those who maybe aren't familiar. And then secondly, CDPs being sort of the connective tissue of data, CX, and AI. And then last one, which these two on the right sort of go hand in hand, but marketing being really like a more central driver of AI innovation, and being more sort of in the driver's seat, kind of like a lot of these, things that Brittany has alluded to so far, empowering marketers to really be executing on some of these AI focused initiatives. So I'm going to double click into these very briefly. So just to quickly elaborate for those who aren't as familiar with composability, um, data warehouse spending has, obviously it's skyrocketed over the last few years. It's expected to hit around 30 billion by 2027. So obviously businesses are really prioritizing bringing their data together into one central location. And the cloud data warehouse, it has been a big pick for many, especially large enterprises with tons of different data sources. Um, so CDPs that plug into these systems are really going to be critical for making that data available across the business, to easily orchestrate and activate from one source of truth. So really the days of rigid all-in-one bundled CDPs are numbered. Those bundled solutions, while they have, very oftentimes they have powerful interfaces that are marketer friendly, enable you to launch use cases, enable you to personalize and, resolve identities and all those things, essentially represent another data silo. So it's not totally sustainable for the long run. And so just a couple of things. This shift unlocks data access, like I said, ensuring all of your models and tools are working from the same up-to-date data set. Less complexity, no need to copy and move data and maintain more data pipelines. That takes up more time of your, data teams. It costs more money. And then security and governance. So, without these extra copies of data floating around, less risk overall and just a better control over your data. Um, so I'll pause for a second. I wanted to ask Brittany, and I know you were going to talk a little bit about this later. Is this relevant for Quicken? Like sort of where are you guys at with, talking about composability? I know you mentioned the cloud data warehouse earlier. If you want to just kind of like touch on how you guys are talking about this.
Yeah, so for us, actually, we'll get to it, I think, at the very end, because that's part of our kind of going forward where we're trying to get to is to be more composable. Um, and really kind of how we see the benefit is, um, right now we're basically we're sending data into our CDP, and really kind of the I would say a huge benefit for marketers for composability is that you're not having to actually send that data over. You just have a pipeline between your two data sources, and you're able to query the data from a different data source whenever you need it. And it just comes in, but it's not stored in your CDP. It's still stored in the other different tools. So I think that there's a lot of benefits to composability, and it really does reduce a lot of the complexity. It reduces the data latency. It's a kind of more secure. You're not sending data to and from all the time. So there's a lot of benefits to it, but that also comes down to your data infrastructure, right? And from personal experience, I can say the marketing team doesn't always have control over the data infrastructure. And so really it's a conversation where sometimes the marketer's leading it, sometimes the data team's leading it, but trying to really work with your data, your IT, your InfoSec, whoever's kind of owning those other tools or some of the other data sources, how do we make sure that we are using the right tools to enable us to be composable, which is a more safe and secure way to manage data.
Yeah, it is definitely a journey to get there. It's not sort of like an overnight flip of a switch, and does require like that really strong alliance between data and marketing. So yeah, that is a good call out. So second prediction, which I mentioned earlier, CDPs being sort of like the engine for CX, AI, and data initiatives. We've mentioned AI a couple of times so far. AI is huge and growing. Everybody knows. It's totally revolutionizing the way enterprises specifically are designing and delivering these customer experiences and really enabling, that next level of scale and that next level of speed. But even the best models are useless without that. And this is kind of what Brittany said earlier, without that data foundation, without that high quality, complete data. Um, and so you really can't cut corners with your data strategy, which is why CDPs are really kind of that central engine. Companies with strong customer data strategies, they grow revenue 2.5 times faster than competitors, according to Forrester. So CDPs are quickly becoming, that really that connective tissue that holds the customer DNA, anonymous to known, et cetera, and really makes AI work. Um, and so, powering some of these areas on the right, better automation, agents can respond in real time, better customer experiences, like turning that raw data into the intelligence that can actually drive like some of the tactics that, we're going to talk about in a bit. Things like predictive, personalized interactions, and then do so across channels. And then stronger alignment across teams. So, sales, service, marketing, working from the same data set. So, so yeah, these are sort of like the main two. We will have, we have our customer data, or sorry, our CDP market guide. We'll send out to anyone who has registered in the email following this. So you can definitely dive deeper into, the full guide, and go into the details of these. But yeah, I just wanted to sort of mention that. Um, and then just to kind of tie it all together, with all that said, how do you navigate the market as a buyer, especially this year? So in reality, every organization is different. You have different teams, budget, goals. You're at different stages, different, industry nuances. Um, so it really is personal to the enterprise that you're at. But we boiled it down to a few key questions to sort of anchor around. And Brittany, I'd love, for you to weigh on these and maybe share some others that Quicken thought about. And maybe these are all relevant for you guys. But the first one, what are your use cases? Like, what are the use cases that are absolutely critical, the ones that are most at the top of mind? Are you focused on activating across different channels? Is resolving customer profiles a major challenge, or has that been a major blocker? Are you trying to scale what you're doing with AI and automation? So that's one. Second, where is your customer data right now? And where do you want it to live? Where do you want to activate from? And then lastly, what are your AI initiatives and what does that roadmap look like? I think, when you're investing in a tool like a CDP, it's worth thinking, 2, 3, 5 years in the future. You don't want to have to, 4 years down the road, realize you're kind of hitting a ceiling with your CDP and it's not going to support the initiatives that you want to be launching. And then you have to kind of start from square one. So what does that roadmap look like? What kind of models are you focused on? Um, do you already have a solution in place to support the use cases? So these are a few like very basic high level areas to start the dialogue. But Brittany, let me know, were these kind of the sort of things that you guys were talking about going into your validation? Were there any others?
Yeah, no, I think these are some good call outs. I would say from kind of the client side of this. So once you decide that you're going for a CDP and you start your evaluation, right, you have your key criteria. Um, Understanding what your use cases are will help you have those conversations with vendors. Because if you don't know what your use cases are, then you don't know what data sources you're using and you don't know where you're trying to activate data to. So really being able to highlight what are a couple of your use cases, right? So for us, and we'll get to them a little bit later, but for us, a lot of them were around onboarding, cross-selling, abandoned cart, things like that, things where we knew we would have high impact. So being able to really identify those up front will save you a lot of time and energy when you go through implementation. Where is your customer data, right? So that once you outline your top use cases, then you're able to say, okay, these are the data sources that we need to integrate or pull data from in a prioritized order because you're doing it towards your use cases. And you want to make sure that you are it's not just where your data is, but it's also maybe what is the data latency? Are there requirements around that to enable your use case? Do you need multiple data sources or is everything in one? Do you have a way to unify that data so you know it's all tied back to the same person? So those are all kind of part of that central conversation around the customer data. And then the third piece is what is your AI initiatives? It really, so for us, when we were talking to vendors, we were asking, what is your roadmap? So we understand this is your product today, but how are you guys going to continue to improve tools as we know AI is coming into the marketplace more and more every day? So I think that it's a little bit twofold, right? It's one, what are the vendors? What is their roadmap? How often do they make updates to their product? How do they communicate that out to customers? So getting a good idea on that, it will be huge. I think then on your own internal side, it's also around how can you bring in tools to help and understanding, are there integrations with different AI tools? Where can you find efficiencies? So a lot of it is around asking questions, especially up front, but also knowing where you're trying to get to in kind of the near future with your immediate use cases, but also, I would say the future, with, what is your optimal operational process?
Yeah, and I feel like getting to even like the answer to that question really relies on a very close alliance and partnership across your organization. I mean, I feel like the most successful customers we've had have a really great partnership between their data and marketing teams, and like their data team was very involved from early on in having these discussions around tooling and vice versa. If the data teams are the ones sort of leading the charge, the marketers are very much involved as well, and they're able to, get in those conversations and ask those questions. So, just wanted to mention that. But okay, let's talk a little about use cases.
I can actually go back one slide. So just to kind of have a comment to what you just said there. So how we kind of handled it on our side is that marketing owned the decision around the CDP or the choice to even go with a CDP, then the decision around the vendor. But throughout the whole process, we were including other, I would say, stakeholders across the organization, right? So we included we looped in basically our data team, our infosec team, our product team to even just let them know, like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is where we're trying to go. And other teams within the marketing team as a whole, and also the leadership team, right? So we made sure that everyone was aware of what we were doing and why we were doing what we were doing, which I think socializing that really benefited of getting buy-in, because when we did this, people did not understand what a CDP was. They just kept saying, well, why can't we just use a data warehouse, right? And they're not the same thing. So there was a big educational piece for us across the organization, but now everyone's on board. And, now that we were able to kind of like prove out what we did, it's been super helpful. So I think getting buy-in early on and socializing what you're trying to do and why will help make you much more successful.
Yeah, definitely not sort of skating by that education piece and then having to backtrack later on. Why have we done this? XYZ. So that's a great point.
Yeah, so just to kind of walk through a couple of the use cases that we are doing right now. We're doing more, but these are kind of the three or two and a half, I would say, that I wanted to highlight. So we started with onboarding. And for us, we had some problems with our onboarding before, right? We didn't have great segmentation. So what I mean by that is we have net new users, we have multi-product users, we have renewers, we have win-backs. We actually didn't have a great way to segment that out. So everyone was just coming in and they all looked like a net new user, and everyone was just getting the same onboarding experience by product. And so by consolidating all of this data, we were able to have deeper segmentations to give the right content to the right people based on what they had purchased. And also maybe if they were a renewer who maybe it was like, 10 days after the renewal, but they just forgot and then manually went in and redid it, versus someone who is came back after being gone for 2 years, versus someone who is completely net new to the company, right? So we're able to treat them in a different way. Additionally, we were able to have kind of this enhanced view of customer data. So one, there's the segmentation for the content was integral, right? But from a different perspective, we brought in product data as well to add that to our 360 view of our users. And what that enabled us to do is kind of give people a personalized checklist. And this is something we're actively working on right now, where you have your key steps for onboarding, but what has the user done and what have they not done? We know that data. How can we activate on that? How can we help the user push them to the next step in a gentle nudge? This is important. This is how you'll be successful with the product kind of way. And so this is something we're actively working on by bringing in those different product events and in a timely way so we can update the customer of, hey, this is your next step, or if this is your next step, here's how to do it in an easy way. We also have really been focusing on cross-sell. So at the beginning, I kind of mentioned, hey, we had these 2 new products that we launched. More recently, we launched them in the fall. And we've really been trying to really focus on cross-sell. Well, because they're net new products, we focus on our existing base first, and we really focus on testing and experimentation. We wanted to understand, what's working, what's not. And this went from different types of things from, on our email campaigns, the email order, or what content across all the different campaigns across channels that we were running was working and what wasn't. We even did price testing, right? What's the price point that works best for conversion, right? So all of these different types of tests were enabled because we had a consolidated view, and we were able, in Action IQ, there is a functionality where you can do like splits on your activation. So it splits the audience for you, and you're able to run those tests across your different channels. So you could, activate wherever you need them to, but it automatically assigns them to a test cell, basically. Another functionality was around that cross-channel activation. So this kind of ladders up to that testing and experimentation. Great, we have all this great learning, and now we can optimize a bit more for our cross-sell campaigns, but making sure that we're also doing this across channels. So as I mentioned, we have relied heavily kind of on our web personalization, email, and in-product functionality, because it's really starting with the entitle are our current subscribers, but we also have been able to incorporate care. our customer service aspect, where we're able to send them data so that way when someone calls in or someone's chatting with them online, they have up-to-date information about that user as well. And then the final piece is we are actively working on updating our abandoned cart to have more timely communications. We have a bit of a data or a delay in our data right now. So we still have something running, which is great, but we want to make it more efficient and optimize it. And so that's something that we're currently working on.
That's great. And I know like since you've launched those two new products recently, this cross-sell is you're doing that for like the first time ever. So I think when you're launching like an entirely new bucket of use cases for the first time, that testing is especially important because you don't really have anything to work off of. And you know, maybe we have folks who have joined who are in a similar boat where you've gone from a single product offering to multiple products, and not sort of skipping over that is super critical. Um, yeah, these are all super exciting. I know you had a few areas you wanted to touch on in terms of like some of the progress so far.
Yeah, just really high level. The impact we've had so far, a lot of it has been it's been both process, or I would say qualitative and quantitative, right? So we've had a lot of process updates, right? So collaboration across all the different teams, expanding our access to data and that unified user profile that we talked about, deeper segmentations, cross-channel orchestration, right? We just couldn't do any of that before. So a lot of that comes down to kind of the process piece. But the kind of big call out is also, so cross-sell was one of our big initiatives with this, with a ton of net new campaigns around it. And based on the audiences we're able to create in Action IQ in our testing and experimentation, we have been able to have 87% of our cross-sell conversions have come from our email and in product, because that's where we're heavily hitting our customers right now. So I'm super proud of the team. We've done a great job around this. And we've definitely seen a big improvement in our overall user experience.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think the the operational and the process related and the collaboration related strides are not for the faint of heart. Those are big challenges to overcome, so it's definitely worth noting, and those challenges sometimes really take time. And then from there, that's when you really start to see, changes in growth, changes in revenue, changes in really some of like those engagement goals. So that's super exciting. And I'm really excited to see you guys continue to make progress with these. Um, that's pretty much, I think. Oh no, we have a little bit more left. What's next?
Yeah, just really quick on this one, just having from a very high level. But as I mentioned, we are trying to move towards composability. That's kind of one of our goals. Figuring out how we can utilize more AI with both Action IQ and our own teams, and then enhancing our personalized experiences across channels. So those are what we're kind of continuing to look to optimize as we go forward.
Great. Thank you so much, Brittany. I really appreciate it. That was all really helpful, and I feel like you hit all of the different stages of, what 2, 3 year journey. So I really appreciate you sharing all of those details. We did want to save some time for questions. So I guess the last thing I just wanted to mention in case we get cut off after the questions. Check out our 2025 CDP market guide. If you've registered, we'll send a follow-up email. There will be an opportunity for you to download it and read a little bit more about some of the market-related things that I mentioned earlier on. But otherwise, Emmy, I can pass it back to you and you can share maybe some of the questions that we got.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those insights. I thought it was really interesting what you said about balancing personalization and privacy, and also making sure that you're constantly evaluating the makeup of your marketing teams and not being afraid to kind of pivot the structure. So we have our first question, or we've received a ton of questions from our audience today, but unfortunately we're running short on time and won't be able to answer all of them during Q&A. But Uniphore and Quicken will follow up separately to answer all of your questions. So the first question is for Brittany, and it is, how did you show ROI before moving forward with these tools? Many SMBs struggle with the costs and risks associated with a big tool and team change and find it hard to get internal buy-in.
Yes. So I would say part of this was we definitely had to build a business case, right? And I think outlining kind of why you know this is important. Um, Working with a vendor, even to kind of help find some industry baselines of how there's improvement once you establish a new CDP or a new tool, to so that way you can kind of show a projection of what you think will happen. I think that's really important. And I would also say, going back to kind of socializing some of this with other teams, you want to find, um, you know, you want to have a champion. Some like maybe you have to be your own champion sometimes, but also finding someone who understands what you're trying to do and really can also help give that buy-in across the company is important, because showing the ROI is big, right? Like there is a lot of data that you can mine to enable you to kind of put this together. And I think it's really coming down to what are the industry standards, where are you at, and what are you trying to get to, and mapping that out so it's kind of a holistic map for those that you're trying to convince internally.
And actually, I wanted to mention something that I just thought about because I know, from our perspective, working with customers, this is a huge um, topic of conversation, and it's hugely important, and it's very challenging to, you're busy building the right team, investing in the right solution, then, proving the value, it is actually a lot harder or easier said than done. And so I think a lot of it actually can come down to the partnership with your vendor too. So like, for example, we do some of this even for prospects that have not, become an Action IQ customer yet. But we have folks on our professional services team who support what we call value mapping, and sort of helping your team prioritize use cases and track those use cases, and then actually sort of translate that into a measurable value, whether that is revenue or whether that is cost savings. And so oftentimes, certain vendors, they can really provide support there as a partner, not only getting these initiatives off the ground, but also sort of documenting how it's actually moving the needle from like a quantitative perspective. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So we have one last question. Brittany, if you want to start, and then Ariane, add your thoughts. With the understanding that Quicken's projects seem to have a lot of support from the teams involved, how would you augment the discussion surrounding unexpected findings and insights about audiences or new audience segments you were previously unaware of? In short, how was the unexpected embraced?
Yeah, so it's actually been a really positive thing for us. So I can actually, without giving too much away, I can give you an example that actually happened last week. So we started using with the audiences we were building, we kind of with that split functionality in Action IQ, we had been doing some testing and some control groups to understand how things were performing. And when we went back and looked at them, we noticed that we had a really high refund sorry, refund rate on one of our products. But when we dug into why that was happening, we noticed that they had just signed up for the wrong product, and they actually were converting on a different product. So we weren't losing them completely, but without having all of this stitched together, it would have just looked like this product had a really high refund rate and we were losing these users right away. But because we had all of this data together, we were able to kind of follow the pattern of what the users were doing. And we saw that the majority of them who were getting the refund were actually moving over to this other product. And that gave us an indicator that we need to, one, clear up our messaging around the product they were getting refunded from, but two, make sure that we are doing a better job at some of the audience selections that we're running as well. So that I would say so far we've been able to really get some great insights, and be able to answer questions that, like, we were getting questions before and having to kind of piecemeal stuff together, but we didn't really have a clear picture. But now that we do, we're able to actually push insights out rather than always being asked for insights. So that's just one example, but for us, it's been a really big benefit because then we're also able to now change the way we market to people, change the audiences. Obviously, we're doing testing and experimentation on those, but that's not just a life cycle issue. That's kind of a marketing branding aspect as a whole and affects every single channel that we're on.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention those sort of like unexpected findings that they can really represent like an unlock. Of course, it's a process. It's a process of, making sense of those findings and figuring out, sort of pinpointing what the causes are, kind of like what Brittany said, getting to the bottom of it. But that's sort of the whole point is, having the right tools and the right people to pinpoint those areas. That's how you get to that seamless customer experience that she mentioned earlier, where the customer is not even noticing that you're trying pretty much. So yeah, but I think she took that one really well. So I don't have much else to add.
Awesome. Well, Ariane and Brittany, thank you again for this great content and answering all the questions from our audience. We really appreciate it. Before we wrap up, let me take a moment to tell you about eMarketer's media channels. So the eMarketer Virtual Summit is back next Friday, May 9th. Join our principal analyst, Sarah Marzano, and others as we break down the trends, strategies, and innovations shaping commerce media. You'll hear from marketers at PepsiCo, Kettle and Fire, Mave, Chase, Walmart Connect, and Google. Register today on our events page at emarketer.com/events. And while you're on that page, you can also register for more webinars like this one. Don't forget to check out our various podcasts. We have Behind the Numbers, Reimagining Retail, and the Banking and Payments Show. Listen everywhere you find podcasts and watch on Spotify and eMarketer's YouTube channel. And finally, please subscribe to our newsletters. Thank you all for joining us today. Thanks again to Brittany and Ariane, to the team at Uniphore, and our eMarketer studio team behind the scenes for making this webinar possible. We'll see you all at the next Tech Talk.